So thanks again, Desmond, and of course, thank you to everyone for taking time out of weekday afternoon to attend today's session. So very honored for Desmond to invite me to be one of the speakers to talk about the Singapore series. Yeah. So actually, just now Desmond already did me a very big favor by introducing Singapore's positioning, and why Singapore is of course sought after as Plan B. So indeed, that is the case, right? Because I've also been traveling very extensively across the region. We have clients from China, we have clients from Indonesia recently, right? So if you're familiar with the Indonesian situation over there, politically not so stable, right? So on and so forth. So actually, a lot of them are actually looking towards Singapore. Myself, I also came back from Jakarta, Surabaya, Beijing, Shenzhen, right? So Singapore has always been on the map when it comes to having a plan B, when it comes to global mobility, right? So I believe, Malaysia and Singapore are neighbors, so many of you would have already observed the same thing as well. So today, Desmond wanted me to talk more about, themes or schemes that are suitable for business owners, right? Wealthy families, and of course, succession planning with a particular topic on trust as well. Because I think Desmond's side, he's an expert on the global mobility part. So of course, he will have seen that other than settling the wealthy families' residency, they'll be thinking about how to take care of their second generation, third generation, what are the most efficient tools, right? And then of
Mm,
course, tax will come into play. And then of course, the various jurisdictions law on, inheritance, right? For example, inheritance tax will also be one of the considerations. So that's why today I'll be sharing on these few themes, yeah. So this is just an introduction of myself. So basically, I'm a licensed lawyer, right? This is my 10th or 11th year. I lost count already. So I'm the owner, founder, and managing director of this law firm called RCP Law LLC. Bears my name, Ronald Chu and Partners. So basically, since the start of my career, I have been handling a lot of yeah, high net worth, ultra high net worth entrepreneurs matters, right? So I'm not like a litigator, I'm not like a corporate lawyer. I'm more a private client lawyer, actually. So that's why mobility is one thing that I will focus on, as well as whether is it from the individual or the corporate side as well. So maybe just one key highlight, right? So of course, Desmond has a lot of accolades, right? I have one that I'm always very proud to share. So in 2016, I was the top scorer or candidate for the bar exams in Singapore. So we are talking about competition with all the global universities, right? From the UK, from Australia, from the US, and all that. So I was the top in Singapore. Now, of course, in Singapore, just now also Desmond did mention that Singapore has become a wealth management hub, right? And family offices has always been very popular among the foreigners to set up in Singapore. So 2023, actually, I completed the Family Office Advisor certification offered by Wealth Management Institute in Singapore, and I'm also a member of the Global Family Office Circle, right, in Singapore. So basically, these are just some of our suite of services. Number one, we do migration, residency. Number two, family offices, right? And then, of course, we have other directors in the firm as well that does corporate commercial, right? Payment services, act matters. And we also have a full license in company secretary. So we can set up companies, we can provide all corporate secretarial requirements. So I think Singapore and Malaysia are very similar, right? So you can, if I have a license in Singapore, then basically it is what you understand that company secretaries can do in Malaysia as well. Of course, we do also advise on employment law and succession planning is today's theme. We'll be talking about wills, lasting power of attorney, and then of course at the end, the important one will be the trust. Right. Then last one, we do have a disputes lawyer. He's also director. Of course, he will talk about prenup, postnup, divorce, right? And of course, if you have a civil or corporate litigation, right, he's the man to go to. So his name is Genesis. So these are just some of the events that I've attended and I've shared. So this is in Singapore. So we did it in conjunction with SGX and Manulife. So this is actually in Jakarta. So I did it in Fairmont. So there were 100 over packs that were in attendance. Then this is in Beijing, right? Beijing with one of the private banks as well. And this is in Guangzhou, right? So small group sharing. Okay, so overview of the Singapore tax and business landscape. So there must be a reason why a lot of foreign entrepreneurs and investors are looking towards Singapore. Corporate tax, we have a fixed rate of 17% headline tax rate. Of course, in the first 3 years, we do have partial tax exemptions for qualifying companies. So basically, small companies in the first 3 years, there is some tax incentives or tax reductions. So very attractive for people to set up business in Singapore. We have no capital gains tax, right? So basically, I think it's the same as in Malaysia, right? If you do your own investing, right, basically you're not liable to pay any tax. Yeah, today, invest in Apple stocks, Microsoft stocks. Two years later, I sell, right? No capital gains. No withholding tax on dividends. And Singapore itself is very easy to set up a company, right? So minimum paid up capital at the start is $1. And then business setup speed, actually 1 to 2 days is very possible, but usually I tell clients 1 week because sometimes we prepare documentations, so on and so forth. But on an urgent basis, actually on the day itself, if we have all the information in, we can already set up the company. So audit side, right? If you are, of course, part of a big company, right? Listed so on, you have a lot, you are sizable, then you'll be asking about audit, right? Whether there's any audit requirements. So small companies, annual revenue below 10 million Sing, right, will qualify for audit exemption. So this is one thing that a lot of people are looking at. Of course, talent and relocation will be if you are setting up shop in Singapore, you will need a work pass or an employment pass to be able to conduct business or day-to-day operations in Singapore. Okay. So then next thing we'll be talking about the requirements to start a company. So as I mentioned, very friendly. The only one thing that my clients have to take note of is there's a local director requirement for a Singapore company. So local or resident director means someone who is a Singapore citizen, someone who is a permanent resident, or someone who has an employment pass in Singapore, means a work pass, right? So at the initial start, right, for clients that do not have any relatives or friends who can act as the directors, then we will provide one. Right. Now, of course, this is an important part of why I want to highlight is because there are companies out there that arrange for directors that are not within the company itself. So sometimes when it comes to account opening, when it comes to signing resolutions and documents, it may be difficult, right, to reach that director. So we provide this in-house service where one of our staff or myself will be the local director. So everything will be done very efficiently. Paid up capital from $1. And then the applicant's role will be as a director and a shareholder typically. Company secretary will be provided by us on the business profile itself. When you incorporate a company, there is a document provided by our company authority, right? So basically, it will show my name as a company secretary because I'm the license holder. So registered office address will be provided by us, our law firm, right? So we'll do all the mail handling, so on and so forth, right? So incorporation time frame within 1 week upon submission, right? Okay. So then the next thing, right? Because we actually do help a lot of enterprises or businesses from the region, right? Indonesia, especially recently, right, to set up their operations in Singapore. We do have Malaysian clients as well, right? For example, in the trading industry, right, who have set up a company in Singapore because of, according to them, right, when it comes to international trading or business activities or negotiations, Singapore company has a good reputation, right? So that's why they choose to set up in Singapore as well. So for every company that's set up in Singapore, if the owner or management team, wants to conduct business in Singapore, wants to have day-to-day operations, then they'll need an employment pass. Otherwise, you'll be in contravention of manpower regulations in Singapore. So that's why the EP is very important. Employment pass called EP, yeah. So here the salary requirements are actually pretty low, right? Generally minimum, SGD 6,000 from 2027, and then for the applicants above age 45, 11,500. Financial services sector, 6,600. So family officers, we are talking about 6,600, right? So on and so forth. So applicable roles will be managers, professionals, executives, right? So this is something that, of course, we can discuss with the client whether what kind of role you want, right, for yourself or for your employees. Then, of course, the next thing I'll talk about will be for the employment pass itself. Um, Now it is a points-based system, yeah. Points-based means you need 40 points, right, in order to get an employment pass in Singapore. So they do look at your age, they look at your qualification. So the older you are, right, of course, for example, I just give you an example. If you're 50 years old, they will compare you with the other 50 years old applicants in Singapore in similar industry or the same industry, right? Then, of course, your salary has to be at least equal or higher than them to score points. Next thing they look at will be your educational background, your qualifications, right? Minimum is a bachelor's degree, right? So two things added together, then they'll tabulate whether you hit the 40 points or not. But these are all details, so I won't really go into it. But for a lot of our clients who are the entrepreneurs, the wealthy, business owners, right? When it comes to Singapore to set up companies to employ themselves, right? I always tell them that if they are of a certain age, above 45 or 50, right, might as well go under this exemption criteria. So this exemption criteria says that if your monthly salary is at least 22,500 a month and above, right, we don't need the authorities don't even need to look at your educational qualifications or your background, right? Basically, you're just coming in under salary. So in this case, the evaluation time is actually very fast, within 2 weeks typically, but our record is actually within 4 working days, we got our client the employment pass. Okay, so this is what I just spoke about, minimum total 40 points, educational background, the age. Okay, so this is like a flow chart of the process. Approximate incorporation time is 1 week, right? So why we call it self-employed EP is because today, right, through Desmond also, we are talking to entrepreneurs, we are talking to the management, senior management, or we're talking to the owners of the enterprises. So a lot of times when they set up companies in Singapore, they're actually like self-employed, right? You're paying yourself a salary. So this is the typical process. 1 week for the incorporation, submit employment pass. From submission to approval is about 4 weeks, fastest 4 working days. EP approval, right? And then you have the corporate bank account, which will take about 2 to 8 weeks time. So this is the important part, right? Corporate bank account in Singapore, at the moment, right? It typically takes a bit of time because of the KYC, the source of wealth assessment. So it's double-edged sword, right? Of course, on the one hand, right, some clients may say, oh, how come it takes that long, right? 1 month, 2 months, when the other jurisdictions take very fast, right? Some maybe within weeks, or some maybe within the day, you can already set up a bank account. But on the other flip side, right, the reason why a lot of wealthy business owners are choosing Singapore as a plan B is because we are stable, we have a very above board, transparent legal system, right? Even when it comes to the financial industry. So that's why uh, there is a good thing when we are strict, right? It means that in Singapore, everything is prim and proper, everything is above board, stability is there, right? And after that, of course, is your start of business operations. So this is the local bank account opening. Prepare documents 1 to 2 weeks, review 4 to 8 weeks, and then approval 1 to 2 weeks. And then your account will be active within 3 to 5 days. So total estimated timeline is about 2 to 3 months. But of course, our caveat is that it's subject to client profile and the bank's own internal requirements. Okay, so that's the part about setting up a company, getting an employment pass, and the bank account, right? So, of course, at one point, right, from the employment pass, of course, you can then plan ahead to apply for the Singapore permanent residency and then Singapore citizenship, right? So, PR is something that a lot of clients are actively seeking for in Singapore, right? Even Malaysian clients, yeah. So the reason why is because I mean there's mobility between Singapore and Malaysia, right? I have relatives in Penang, Of course, Malaysian residents would have also relatives in Singapore, vice versa, so on and so forth. So that's why there's mutual mobility. Okay, so next thing I'll be talking about will be succession planning, right? So once you've set up a business in Singapore, you got your employment pass, right? Maybe you convert to PR later on. You'll be thinking about how do I pass on these assets to my second generation, to third generation. I suppose this applies also to, for example, if you were to migrate to Australia, migrate to New Zealand, you will then need to understand what are the local succession, laws, right? Whether there's going to be inheritance tax, whether, what are the important things I should be looking at when it comes to the assets in these respective jurisdictions, yeah? So this is actually the three essential estate planning tools that I will always recommend to my clients if they have assets in Singapore, right? Whether they are PR, whether they are citizens, or whether they are just a foreigner but with an employment pass in Singapore. As long as they do have assets in Singapore, whether is it money in the bank or whether is it a property that they have, then these are the three important things that you should take note of and you should start planning if you have not done so. Because as a business owner myself, like with Desmond also, right? We are very busy with running our business day to day. We are so busy. Sometimes we neglect our own succession planning. So even a lawyer for myself, right? Sometimes I got to set aside time deliberately during the weekend to think about, hey, what are those things I need to put in place? Much less the busy professionals or busy business owners out there running, the mega companies, so on and so forth. So this is like a reminder as well. So will takes effect after death, distributes your assets according to your wishes. You have to appoint an executor. Lasting power of attorney, right? So this is the point I want to make. So a lot of clients, they know about the wasiat, they know about the will, but they do not know about the lasting power of attorney. Will takes place after death, but lasting power of attorney takes place while you're still alive, but you lose your mental capacity. Means you may be hospitalized, you may be suffering from dementia, right? So in this case, legally in Singapore, actually, you will not be deemed capable to make financial decisions on your own. For example, withdrawing monies from a bank account, transferring monies elsewhere. So you need someone like a donee, for example, someone who you can give power to take out these affairs if you should lose your mental capacity. Okay? So these are the two things, the will and the lasting power of attorney. So if you want more details, then of course, after the session, if you need to have another one-on-one and all that, then maybe through GMS, through Desmond, then we have another separate session. Okay, so this is what I just spoke about. So I just summarized it just now already. So only takes effect only after death. So the thing here why we want to highlight this, right, is because a lot of clients do not know. They think the will can also, take place if I should lose mental capacity. But will only takes effect only after you have passed on, after death. Okay. So lasting power of attorney, like what I mentioned, applies during your lifetime when you lose your mental capacity, where you're suffering from dementia, right? So I just want to give you an example, right? I recently went to a client in Glen Eagles. So he has been hospitalized for 5 years already. And what was he suffering from, right? Brain cancer, actually, right? So brain cancer in a coma also you can last 5 years. It doesn't mean today you are suffering from terminal illness means next week you'll be definitely, dying or passing away. So what if it stretches for a very long time, like 5 years, 10 years, right? Then you need someone who can handle all these things while you are still in the hospital. Okay, next, we come to the last portion because I'm conscious of time also. Yeah. So trust is something that Desmond has specifically asked me to talk about because I think at a very high level for wealthy families, trust is something that inevitably you will come into contact with, right? Either the private banks will tell you about trust, right? The banks at all the levels also when it comes to succession planning will tell you about, right? Or your lawyers, your tax advisors will tell you about, okay? So key parties, yeah. So we are talking about settlor. So basically the person setting up the trust is called settlor, the person who is injecting the funds into the trust itself. Second is a trustee. So trustee, I want to explain. So trustee, there's two types of trustees. Yeah, trustee is the person that legally owns your assets now after you have injected it into the trust, right? So they will be the ones managing it for you for the benefit of your children or your beneficiaries. And beneficiaries can be family members, can be friends, can be children, so on and so forth. Trustees are usually separated into two different categories. Number one will be the bank's trust, like for example, HSBC trust, so on and so forth, right? Then on the other hand, right, independent trustees will be like your Trident Trust, your Vista Trust, your British Malayan trustees, so on and so forth. Yeah. And then lastly will be protector. So beneficiary, everyone knows, so I won't have to expand on it. Beneficiary means the person that will be receiving the assets, right? After a certain like a milestone has been reached, right? Or decided by the settlor. So protector is someone that monitors the work of the trustee, right? So it's like an overall monitor. So while you're still alive, you typically the client will assign themselves as the protector because who better to oversee the trustee, right? Whether you are carrying out the instructions according to my intention or my will, right? So when you set up a trust, there will be a trust deed and there will be a letter of wishes. So this is where you have a conversation with either the bank's trust or the independent trust company, right, to talk about how you want your assets to be taken care of, to be invested, to be managed, and to be passed on to your beneficiaries when a certain milestone is being hit. So, for example, right? So, for a lot of business owners that set up trust, right, they'll say, okay, if my son do eventually join me, right, join my company, take up the position of a management role like a CEO, so on and so forth, I'll give him certain amount of shares, I'll give him certain amount of money, right, as incentive. So that's one of the things that the trustee is supposed to ensure that these are all carried out. So then the protector will then look and ensure that all these things are done in accordance with the settlor's intention. So these are the three roles, and then beneficiary is the fourth role. Of course, trust duration, right? There are different jurisdictions. So Desmond may also be familiar. Singapore only up to 100 years. Some clients say, oh, 100 years is already very long, right? Two or three generations will already be enough. because there's always a saying, right? 富不过三代. But of course, the trust is here to ensure that your 富 will 过三代 lah, So then the next thing will be, other than Singapore, there will be other offshore jurisdictions like Cayman Island, Jersey, so on and so forth. I won't go into detail for this, but they are generally the same because we're under British common law, same as Malaysia. So there is also an asset protection timing. Just speaking from the Singapore perspective. So a lot of clients, why they want to set up trust, of course, a big part of it is how do I pass on my wealth to the second, third, fourth gen. But on the other hand, there's also a legal function. So if you put in your assets into an irrevocable trust, right, 5 years earlier, 5 years later, according to Singapore laws, no creditor will be able to then touch the assets in the trust itself. Yeah. So this is according to law in Singapore. Okay, so this is just basically a very simple like flow chart or overview. Yeah, settle law transfers assets into the trust. Trustee, right, will hold legal ownership and manage assets. Right, so protector will monitor the trustee approval rights for some important decisions. Even the protector will be able to veto as well. But this will depend on how you structure your trust. Okay, then beneficiaries will then receive economic benefits. So trust itself, if you look regionally, you look internationally, trust has been around for a very, very long time. So of course, we have very famous cases coming out from Hong Kong and China, yeah, in these recent years. So we do have one tycoon in Hong Kong, right? Basically, when he set up the trust, he sold off everything. So every month just fixed dividends that, I mean, the fixed dividends that the beneficiaries will receive. Okay. So this is what I mentioned about the asset protection, yeah. Protect assets from personal liabilities and creditors, preserve wealth across generations, and then there will be a controlled distribution of assets across the generation. Okay, so I think we have come to the last few slides. So key considerations, not for existing liabilities. So please do not misunderstand. A trust is not for you to escape debt liabilities, right? Or to siphon funds, right, into the trust, so on and so forth, right? So irrevocable structure is preferred. This one will give you will entitle you to protection of which is what I just mentioned, right? This the part. So the ring fencing of your assets 5 years later, right? It has to be irrevocable. Limit settle control, choose the right trustee. So this one we will work with Desmond, right, to choose the right trustee and ensure compliance. So this one will be left to us. So I think this is the last slide already. So this is just like a typical structure. Actually, not typical, sorry. This is at a very high level. This is kind of structures that we can structure for very wealthy families. So trustee on top, who will manage the funds below. Actually, this is a family office structure, right? So we are talking about the SG Fund Management Co, the SG Fund Co. So this will be where you set up Singapore Family Office, enjoy the tax exemption, right? Employ yourself as one of the investment professionals under the family office. Trust will manage. Then at the side, Singapore, there is another entity called the VCC, right? Variable Capital Company. These are actually more for families that have a lot of excess funds and they want to do overseas investments, right? So you can go through this VCC entity that we have in Singapore that also has a tax exemption scheme available. Okay. So I won't go much into details into it, but if any one of you will be interested to know, then please contact the team. Yeah, so this is actually the last slide that I have. So these are just some of my details.